Level 5 takes that flow of improvement, internalizes it into your systems. So essentially, you normalize change, right? You are creating a way of working which is constantly pushing to the fail point and using that fail point in order to automatically change, right? And this, by the way, is not true only for AI. This is true for a lot of different maturity.
Yeah, I think there's an ancient cosmic wisdom that can be tracked back to maybe more analog concepts, but it's the same principle. So you're the one who developed this maturity model or adapted it?
The basic logic of the maturity model is the same for many maturity models.
They're all very similar, but you've
I've adapted it to the AI.
We're definitely going to share that because I think before we create one ourselves, I think common language and common reference points is helpful.
And by the way, feedback is always well appreciated, right?
So okay, good.
This is something that is just started and it's growing, and all feedback is really valuable. This is, however, because you had a very clear question, what does this stuff mean in practice, right? So if I'm looking at it, if I'm the CEO of a company and I want my whole company to grow, then this is how I'd look at it. I'd look at this maturity expectations and I'm saying, we're down here and in the next 2 years we're going to get to the main points of level 2, but I see a further path. The contrary to this is the individual's perspective, right? I'm a project manager. I'm overloaded with all sorts of chaos. I can't even catch up with myself. The last time I hit a Friday afternoon when I finished all I wanted to do was like when I was 6. And what do? How can this help me? Right? And that's a completely different story.
With a lot of the things that are time consuming, I mean, one of my big pet peeves that I don't think most people understand enough, most people refer to portfolio management. The standard in portfolio management and project management is this then. But in reality, you can't do portfolio management unless you integrate financial portfolio management, product portfolio management, and project portfolio. It's a triumvirate. It's the holy trinity, I call it.
That's true.
And for me, if you were to ask me, if I were to try to be visionary, I don't know how we would do it from a software or a hardware perspective. But one of the things I think that could absolutely revolutionize the project management world is, because I think the biggest weakness we have in project management today as a community, global community, is the lack of sufficient portfolio management. So as an executive, I would love to have a clear overview of how many projects I have. I would love to have a clear overview of what is my total annual budget that I'm spending. Okay, I have some kind of a triage of what projects. There would be some kind of pre-selection process based on criteria that we could set. That it could quickly filter through 1,000 suggestions. Even if one of my employees, if I have an open door policy, at least electronically, that one of my clients writes down a one-page summary, and it's put into the system, and the system already pre-selects whether or not it's in line with my strategy.
You don't need AI for this.
I don't know if it's AI that we need for it, but we need it
badly,
and I don't see it. So that's why. I play the Dow in this podcast. I'm the dumbest assumed user, but that's at the end of the day. I can channel a CEO who says, "I don't really give a crap what you call it. Right. Give it to me.
Right.
Give it to me. But I've got all this data. We spent the last 20 years talking about big data. I used to always shake my head at big data because we have all this data, but nobody knows how to make it relevant because you can't crunch it. Now we're at the dawn of AI, and somewhere down the line, we're also talking about supercomputers or quantum computers. That's going to be another huge jump.
Scary.
So now the question is, we spent so much money in getting this data. When are we finally going to use it? And when is it going to empower us and offer us value? And that's where I think AI should be on the forefront, and it is on the forefront.
It is. Absolutely.
I just don't think most people understand how the building blocks go. What comes first? What comes second? Yeah.
So this, using the historical that many companies have of data in many different areas, is exactly that level 2 to level 3 stage that we were talking about earlier, right? So you'd first prioritize for example, risk management, right? There's a lot out there using AI for risk management. There's a lot of data that we have, all the historicals of risk registers from past projects, whatever. All that stuff there can absolutely help you in your next project. But what are you going to do? Go read through the risk registers by hand? What are you going to do? I mean, so there for sure AI can help, and that's a level 2 step. That's a level 2 step. Right?
Okay.
Because it's separate. Imagine that fails, it doesn't impact the rest of your company. You just go back to doing your risk registers the way you're doing them now. But very powerful from that perspective, from the perspective of that value stream itself. And you can do a couple of these value streams, right? And invest on these.
You could do earned value with it, because one of the reasons why earned value fails is because we either don't have the resources or the time or the inclination to chunk down our projects and plan it with that level of accuracy. And then to track it is a nightmare as well. If we can automate that, that would be another example.
So there's earned value, very interesting. I've seen a couple of projects that used it very effectively, and I've seen a huge amount that totally failed. And usually the reason for which they fail is because they lack an ability to estimate percentage of completion of their activities, and therefore the whole earned value system just flies out of the window. Forget about it.
Well, I've seen guidelines there though. There's workaround. I know one company that's a little bit over the top that says it's either 0 or 100%. Because it's software. That's ridiculous.
Exactly. If you have a lot of very tiny packages, then okay. But but you're completely right. There are guidelines. Essentially, you swap accuracy for objectivity, and you are able to do
There's a trade-off,
There's a trade-off. But in any case, the point is you need to do that. And yes, you're completely right. There is knowledge that AI can help with there. So for example, evaluating the correct level of percentage of completion for different stages of your
if you give it a guideline on how to estimate it, then it could probably do a lot for it. You might have to once again double check, but
you'll have to double check the calculations, but it will give you principles on how the guidelines themselves it will help you create, right? Because at the moment, what we have is very rough guidelines. This type of, if you have a monitoring and controlling work package, if you have a tiny work package, whatever, the AI will fine-tune those approaches to the single specific work package and give you much more reliable approach to calculating the percentage of completion. Then, do you want it to calculate it or do you want to calculate it yourself is another issue, but it'll come up with the mechanism.